Barry's just tried to kill me. Now I just pissed my favorite fucking film.
Hey, everybody pisses himself the first time.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you?
No, I didn't. But listen, look, you did.
Welcome to the day shift, motherfucker.
I want to go ahead and I want to move on to the next part of my stream, which is my review for Day Shift, the 2022 vampire film, comedy horror vampire film starring Jamie Foxx. For those who don't know, it's about a vampire hunter who needs to earn enough money to prevent his estranged family from moving away. So a lot of you probably already know my general thoughts on the film already who watched the Double Toasted review, which we did on the Sunday service chat. You know, I talked about how generic the film was and everything, and how I think a lot of it doesn't work aside from a couple of things. But I kind of wanted to still go over my, my general thoughts and also get into nitty-gritty details as to why I feel like this movie is just, just so generic, so bland. Not outright awful, not good, but it just kind of exists, chat. And I feel like the reason is, honestly, it's like this film is as generic as an action comedy can get. It follows the same structure as any buddy cop, any everyman action movie. You have the sarcastic, crazy badass, in this case played by Jamie Foxx, teams up with the polar opposite guy or woman or whoever. In this case, it's a nerdy guy played by Dave Franco. And, the plot usually revolves around to save his family and stop the bad guy. That's what this movie is. That's the entire plot of this film, chat. And also for whatever reason, I don't know what it is about this, but always in the background for all these types of movies, chat. Actually, this kind of dates back to like the 1940s too, with like noir films. But there's always like a real estate scam that goes nowhere and is often forgotten about by the time we get to the third act. That is just consistent, and I just don't understand it. Honestly, like, why do you always have this? Like, if you're never gonna call back, you're never gonna mention it again, then why even have it in the movie? It doesn't make any sense. The other thing about it is just the film has this like no character development. The characters are there to say mildly amusing things, or scream, or give copious amounts of exposition, oftentimes to explain the world, to explain what's going on because they lost track because of the various action scenes that they had. And the one thing I will say is that the action choreography, specifically like the gunplay, or I guess the correct term would be the gun kata, and the hand-to-hand scenes are quite good. They're pretty good, and they're quite a bit of fun. Those scenes are like, these are effort put in. Like, this is apparently behind the same people, not the same directors, but by the choreographers who worked on the John Wick film. As one of the big taglines from the movie for the marketing is, from the guys that taught John Wick how to kick ass. It's that team. And that stuff works. That's fun. It's entertaining enough. But I would say not all the action works. Like that the hand-to-hand stuff and the gun kata stuff, well, certainly in the first 2/3. They kind of abandoned that in the last third. They got lazy. They're like, all right, we got to wrap this shit up. We're spinning our wheels here. Let's wrap this up. And they kind of abandoned all that. All that choreography leaves the movie at one point. It's very weird. But there are some additional action scenes in the film. A lot of car chases. And they constantly go to those fucking waterways, those aqueducts in Los Angeles. Like, I get it that is apparently that's a famous thing in Los Angeles, chat. But I'm like, I want to stop seeing that. I'm just kind of bored with it. Okay, Terminator 2, Judgment Day. That is the best that they ever used that waterway. If you're not going to be as good as Terminator 2, Judgment Day, action sequence with the fucking motorcycle and the semi-truck, if you're not going to reach those same levels, then don't do it. You need to be as good, if not better, than that action sequence. If you're not going to do it, then I don't want to see you fucking go down that waterway ever again. I'm sick of it. It's tiring. And the car chases just look cheap. That's the other thing, too, about this. Like, Netflix, this was so crazy, because I was like, okay, how much does this movie cost? Was this like $30 million? It was like a $30 million, and like $20 million went to like Jamie Foxx, and then everything else spread out. This was a $100 million movie. This was a fucking 9-digit film. And some of the effects that they have in this film, they look cheap as hell. It's something from After Effects. Like, if you're an explosion, you're going to look like shit. I mean, we detailed this during our review on the Sunday service on Double Toasted chat. Like anytime a vehicle hit another vehicle, you had this terrible After Effects explosion that just did not work. But it's also in the rest of the film too. Especially towards the third act, when they go to like an abandoned mall, and then eventually, Chad, we go to a straight up a set that looks like it's from Nickelodeon Studios, Chad. I think they reused the set from Remember Legends of the Hidden Temple, Chat? And he had all the various team, like the Green Chameleons and the Silver Monkeys and shit, and it's all a bunch of these kids just fucking fighting each other and tearing each other apart to make sure that they won whatever the prize money was, like $10,000. I don't remember. But they legitimately fight on that set, and it looks terrible. And that's the other thing, too. Because of the cheap sets, because of the very inconsistent CGI, it just made me realize that there's just such a lack of grit to this film. And I'm not saying like, oh, it should be dark and gritty. That's not what I'm saying. It's just, it feels just so clean and bland and safe. Like even when they're doing all the action choreography, I noticed this. They're all fighting. I guess it makes sense because they're fighting in these homes because the real estate scheme. They're going over in these homes. And that's why the homes look all fucking immaculate. It looks like no one lives there. But at the same time, it kind of takes me out of it a little bit. And it feels like I said, it feels too safe. It feels too bland. And that is in despite of the gore and of the salty, language. They say they say a lot, all that's there. But it almost feels it's coming across like really try hard. Like when I think of a lot of vampire films, like some of the best ones, like one of my favorites is Near Dark, Chat, which is a neo-Western horror movie. And you have so many scenes where you follow this vampire family led by Lance Henriksen. And they're going to these locations like these diners or these bars. And it's like these places feel lived in. They feel real because they were. And I loved how they shoot the action in those movies. I'm like, I wish, and I'm not saying that it needs to be as dark or as disturbing as something as Near Dark or Blade, but I just miss some of that grit. Like nothing feels like people like live here. And that kind of took me out of it. It's a weird criticism, but it was just something that kept popping up and just kind of stuck with me through a lot of the movie. Certainly the last third of the film, where I feel like they just give up. And, getting more details about the characters. I mean, Jamie Foxx is playing, Jamie Foxx, I think he's a talented man. He's a Renaissance man, Chat. He's a talented actor. He's a talented comedian, a singer. He's got it all. But Jamie Foxx I feel like he's just kind of relied on being Jamie Foxx. He's the charismatic anti-hero. He's not so overtly funny, more so that he's very sarcastic. He's an asshole. He's sarcastic. He says sarcastic things to pretty much anyone, whether it be people he has a good relationship with or he doesn't. And that's all he really functions as. He doesn't change as a person. If anything, his behavior is rewarded because it turns out like, he was right about everything the entire time. And that's kind of just boring. I mean, there'll be stuff what he says, like he is the most fun character in the movie. If he wasn't in there, then it would have been like some old bullshit to me. This would have been just a slog to watch. But he keeps you mildly interested and chuckling, not outright laughing, but chuckling throughout the movie. There's some scenes I'm like, that was pretty fun. That was cool. But overall, he's just kind of there. He's just doing his thing. He's being Jamie Foxx. Now we get to the characters who I feel like are just grating and annoying. And they're perfectly represented by Dave Franco as a character, Seth, who he's a pencil pusher. He works at a desk, Chat. It's the whole thing about you team two people up who have nothing in common, who come from completely different lives, and they're forced into a situation where they have to work together and they have to learn to balance each other out. The thing is about that, like we've seen the whole nerdy guy caught in a horrible situation. It's just that with Dave Franco's character, the only thing he does is scream and piss his pants. Like there's a running gag in this movie where he's constantly, things are coming out of his body. He's pissing himself. He's vomiting, Chat. And to get this is a spoiler review. I'll just do spoilers, Chat. Like something that's interesting with him is, because they deal with the whole vampirism thing. Actually, there's one positive thing. Let me put a pin in Dave Franco. One of the things I think is kind of cool about the movie is they do establish a lore that they have this like vampire hunter union, and it's they've been in existence for quite some time, and kind of like what if Van Helsing decided to become a businessman, right? And it's all around the world. Like, you have different vampire unions, hunting organizations around the globe. But like, this is kind of cool. The only thing that they also establish is the different types of vampires. Like, they have the Ubers, which are like the leaders of the pack. Like, those are the toughest ones. And they're like, you have elders, which are like in leadership positions. But then you have like ones called spiders, and those are the ones that can like pop and lock their joints and crawl on walls. I was like, that's kind of, and they have some other ones too. I was like, that's neat. But going back to Dave Franco, in the film, chat, which spoilers right here, is a big old, not that it matters, he gets bit. He gets bit leading into the third act, and he becomes a vampire, and it's just then he's like, oh, now he can become kind of a badass, because he gets vampiric abilities, but they still rely on the same jokes with him. Like, eventually, he gets his fucking head cut off. And so it's just a constant jokes of his fucking head falling off. That's all it is. Or him leaking like blood and guts and gore out of his severed head and going, the whole time. And that's all he is in the film. He doesn't change, doesn't become a better person. If anything, he just indulges Jamie Foxx's kind of shitty behavior and eventually becomes his buddy. That's what it is. You have Snoop Dogg in the film is Big John Elliott. Snoop Dogg's playing Snoop Dogg, chat, and I don't expect anything else from him, you know. He's fine. He's not terrible. He's probably become a better actor over time, honestly. But he's there for a short burst, you know. He's there to remind people, like, hey, I am Snoop Dogg. I am a singer. I am a rapper. I'm gonna reference my music. Like, his music plays throughout the entire film. I'm like, I get a little on the nose there, but sure, whatever. You know, he gets some epic moments. And the thing is, like, Jamie Foxx, I feel like he trains for these movies, and like his choreography is good. Like Snoop Dogg, I get the sense they're constantly shooting around him because Snoop Dogg isn't actually doing all this choreography and it feels a little awkward for him. Like, when we see fucking Jamie Foxx, he's doing everything. He's dodging, he's weaving, he's punching shit, he's shooting. Snoop Dogg gets a minigun. Snoop Dogg gets a minigun and he occasionally punches people. That's what he does. And it feels a little awkward. He's not bad though. He's fine. But, you know, he's himself. He's himself, Jeff. Then we get to everyone else's, to me, is just boring and generic, and I'm like, the only purpose you serve is to set up a plot point, or you're a MacGuffin, or you're there to deliver exposition. We have Natasha Bordizzo, who plays the character of Heather in the movie, chat, and she comes in at like the end of the second act, only to set up the events of the third act. Where, of course, as always, Chad, the main villain absconds with with the hero's family, and it's like, oh shit, that one character you met literally immediately before the events of this informed on you, and she's a vampire. She's a vampire. She's like, I'm a good vampire though, which they do not really establish. Like, they establish like all vampires are pieces of shit. They're evil. All they want to do is eat and fuck and breed. That's it. But she's like, I don't want to be a vampire. I was forced on me, so I'm gonna be a good vampire. I'm like, okay. And she's just there to deliver exposition. Like, I'm sorry, they're over here. Let's go. Let's team up, and we can fight the villain. And they went, okay, sounds good. And that's all she's there for. They don't really do anything interesting with her outside of that, chat. And then we get to, you know, the Jamie Foxx's wife, who is played by Meagan Good. Meagan Good, her purpose in the movie, chat, is to chastise and yell at Jamie Foxx and to show off her butt. That's it. Because literally, I like, listen. You know, I'm no prude, but I'm like, Netflix, I know what you're doing. The literal first scene with Meagan Good is they have her in the tightest jeans I have ever seen, chat, and her booty is just on full display. And that camera is just constantly behind her, showing off her booty butt. And I'm like, I know what you're doing. And that's it. She's just there to yell at Jamie Foxx and to show off her butt. And that's all she does in the movie. A wasted role. Now we have some other... oh yeah, I forgot. The main villain, played by Karla Souza, chat. She plays Audrey San Fernando. She's evil vampire real estate agent. She is giving some awful dialogue. I mean, like her first sentence. You know what the definition of insanity is? It's doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting a different outcome. That's her first line. All she does is espouse evil villainous monologues. And she tortures people, and she says, like, oh, I will swear vengeance because of you did something to me, and now you're on my radar. But we shall, and her whole plan is, she wants to, Far Cry 3 reference, very much so. Voss did it better, Chad. Voss did it better. All right, Michael Mondo, who fucking killed it on Better Call Saul, chat, absolutely killed it. Any case, you know, her evil real estate plan. Her plan is I want to buy California for vampires. That's her plan. But even then, it's like, why? Just take over at that point. Who cares? But in any case, that's her plan. But her real estate plan is later forgotten because she just wants vengeance against Jamie Foxx and his family because they did something that negatively affected her. That's pretty much it. That's her whole thing. That's her whole thing. Blackstone, greed, salutation to you, Blackstone. Hope you're living long and prospering. Yeah, reviewing Day Shift, indeed. Lethal Weapon plus Train Day plus John Wick plus Euclid Laces equals Day Shift. Pretty much. You nailed it. You nailed it. If you've seen any of those movies, chat, you've seen something that is infinitely better than Day Shift, in my opinion. You also have these two characters that show up just for an action scene, and they're called the Nazarian brothers, and they're like, yeah, they're Russian bros, played by Steve Howey and Scott Adkins, who apparently does not age. He's been in all these movies since like the 90s or something. That guy's in everything. Doing like, and all that, they're just there for an action scene. They're there for two things. There are two reasons. One, they're there for what is arguably the best action scene in the movie, and they do a good job. They're staking vampires, shooting people with shotguns. It's all good and fun. However, they are clearly setting them up for a spin-off movie. I think because they even have it. They even have they have their own theme and their music, and the movie can literally be called Nazarian Bros or Nazarian Brothers, a Day Shift film or whatever. That's what they're gonna do. And they're in there for like, hey, Jamie Foxx, we should team up, bro. And Jamie Foxx is like, I don't know if I want to, but then he looks at a picture of his little girl, is like, okay, we should. And then they fight a whole, arguably the best scene in the movie. They fight a whole nest, a whole hive, chat. It ain't one vampire, it's the whole damn hive. And they fight all of them in this immaculate-looking house, and they win, and they beat them. They do. And they're like, all right, bye. And they just leave. And they just don't, like, oh, they're going to show up at the end? Nope. They're gone. Because they're setting up their spin-off movie, chat, which they most likely will do. I don't know how this movie has done on Netflix. I don't know if it probably is number one. I wouldn't be surprised. But they're clearly setting up a sequel for them. We'll see. And then, we get to again, at this point, anytime I see this, I love this man. I love Peter Stormare, chap, but anytime I see him in the film now, I'm like, he's going to be one of two things. He's going to be just the villain, or he's going to be the villain the other villain kills. That he just functions as that. He always plays the slimy pawn shop owner, the slimy second in command, or the slimy, number one guy. But that's all he serves now. And that's the thing. Peter Stormare he's a very successful character actor because he stars, I feel like, in at least 20 films a year doing the same thing. But he's cornered the fucking market, chat. And more power to him, no doubt about it. But I would really like to see Peter Stormare like in a role where he's the hero, where he's actually the father figure. Like, I don't know, I just want to see them different because he's doing the same thing. He's clearly successful at it, but anytime like, all right, you instantly know what's going to happen to him, chap. You instantly know that the villain's going to go to him because he's the guy that I sell everything, including information. Like he immediately says, I sell everything, including information. Well, you know that the bad guy is going to go and interrogate Peter Stormare, and he'll betray whoever it is, or he'll say nothing and they will still die. Maybe give him a little bit of honor, chat. But that's what they do in the film. It's implied he does not die well. Gets all of his fucking teeth ripped out because that's his whole function is, I guess a big currency in the movie is vampire teeth, or that proves that you killed a vampire or whatever. And it's kind of interesting. Like they pull out the tooth and you can tell like how old the vampire is and like what kind of species it is, and by the teeth, it's like, oh, that's kind of interesting. I don't mind that. But that's what he does in the movie. He dies. That's it. And so I kind of like just to wrap up, Chan. Honestly, it is this film. Sadly, like so many other Netflix movies, is right at home on Netflix. It's just another generic action thriller that'll entertain you enough for 2 hours and most likely be forgotten about the next day. There are dozens and dozens and dozens of other vampire films or other action movies that are out there to enjoy that, in my opinion, are better than this. Although the thing is, though, I have seen a lot of people who have been, some of you guys in the chat, I've seen a lot of people who have been really enjoying this movie, been having a lot of fun with it, Chad. And, again, I think there's some fun stuff to be had, but I don't know. When I think about the vampire films that I personally like, or the action movies, or the detective buddy cop films that I like, they all kind of do everything better, infinitely better than Day Shift, Chad. But that's just my opinion. Like I said, if I would give this a rating on the double toasted scale, it's a rental. Perfectly at home for where it is, Chad. But that's just my thoughts on the movie. What about you guys? How do you feel about Day Shift?